much he liked. Fred Beard is with us, County Commissioner, and Jerry Fanning, who is the Governmental Affairs Director. Did I get that right?
That's great.
All right, the GAD. And we're kind of recapping yesterday's County Commission meeting, and we were talking at the end about a number of different things, revenue generating oil and gas and budget situation. And I think we were also talking about some of the money from the marijuana folks and just some different issues like that. Jerry, you wanted to make one more point about...
And actually, as I sit here, there's and Fred reminds me, there's a couple of points I need to make, but one of the important things I want to bring out is I talked about interim legislative interim committees will be meeting, and next week on July the 14th in Carlsbad, the Radioactive and Hazardous Materials Committee will be meeting there at New Mexico State University in room 103. That'll be at... I think it's at 9 o'clock. Let me look at my numbers here. Yes, 9 o'clock there at the college. This committee is going to be talking about several Southeast New Mexico issues. Just to touch on a few, they're going to be addressing the proposed consolidated interim storage facility for Southeast New Mexico. We all know that as Holtec. That'll be on the agenda. They're also going to be talking about permit modifications and the future of WIP. In Southeast New Mexico, the Carlsbad Environmental Monitoring and Research Center will be giving you a report on the monitoring of the WIP project. And then, interesting enough, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll have a panel talking about produced water issues in and out of the oil field. Updates on the brine well will be talked about. We touched on that earlier. And then we'll see, they'll have a briefing on the state of New Mexico versus United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which we know the state is actually, I think they're in a legal battle with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC. So it will be a very informative, and I'm sure will become highly opinionated meeting, because it does deal with a lot of really big issues for Southeast New Mexico. So if any folks are interested in being there, we have 2 representatives on that. Senator Gallegos is on that committee as a member, and also Representative Catherine Brown is a member of that committee, and I'm sure they'll appreciate any input or support that the citizens can give them for that meeting. So that's next week.
It's an interesting discussion because with all the talk nationally of renewables and clean energy and this big drive to electrify the cars and the windmills and all this kind of stuff, people seem to not want to talk about nuclear power as a clean alternative to some of the other energy sources that we have in order to produce this electricity that we need to have to power all these batteries and cars and all this other kind of stuff. And New Mexico has kind of been in and out of the forefront, especially this part of the state on the nuclear area. I remember when the WIP site was being proposed and developed and prepared for permitting to operate when Bill Richardson was in the Congress. He did everything he could to slow that sucker down. Then when it finally got approved and he became the governor, he ran campaign ads talking about how he was such a big supporter of WIP and the nuclear industry and all that. And those of us that were observing were going, how does he get away with that? You know, what kind of a sense, and I guess maybe that's going to come from this meeting, what kind of a sense are we going to get from the attitudes in Santa Fe towards the encouragement of and the promotion of nuclear energy and what New Mexico can do to be a part of and benefit from nuclear energy in the country?
Well, I think I go back to one thing, Gene, is that it does not, and this is a point that people miss, it doesn't matter what kind of energy that we talk about. There are always byproducts of that industry.
Sure.
And you say, well, how can wind industry do that? Well, those windmills break down. Those things have to be disposed of. They have to be maintained. Solar panels.
The minerals that go into the windmills.
That go into that. There are always another factor involved. And just like with oil and gas, and we have to dispose of those things. So it's the same thing with nuclear. There's byproducts from nuclear. I think the important thing that we bring out is that what I often say, and I'm kind of a black and white guy, and I like to have all the facts, kind of like the old Dragnet series, just give me the facts. I like to have the facts. And so I think before you formulate your opinion off of what you read in the newspaper, A good informed voter is a good voter. And so take that information, find out as much as you can, ask those pointed questions of these people that are involved in this decision-making process, then make your decision, and hopefully by that you can influence their decision.
Sure.
I mean, that's kind of a roundabout political answer to what you asked, but there's people on both sides of this issue right now. And I think it's very challenging as an elected official for Fred and others on the commission to make those decisions, because there's still a lot of information coming in that needs to be looked at and those kind of decisions made. We know that we've heard a lot of things out of Santa Fe. They're in opposition to the WIP and also the Holtec facility. Some of that, I can tell you, is factual. A lot of that is emotional. And so those are things that we have to, as an elected official, have to take everything in consideration. And I'm not an elected official. I'm looking at Fred. No. People can't see me looking at Fred except if they're online. But at the same time, those are things that our commission has to do. But
No, I understand that. And that's why my question was kind of like, what sense do you get? And you kind of touched on it there.
It is on both sides.
On both sides. Yeah. And it's really kind of a shame that it doesn't get a broader discussion. Navajo Holly Frontier, with that new facility that they're building, is and one of their primary customers is going to be like California. Well, we could do that with nuclear. You know, we could go in. I'm a proponent of nuclear. We could go into nuclear, and then our governor could call up Newsom, if he's still there, and say, I got your electricity. You know, we got your biodiesel, now we got your electricity. We got you covered. You know, send some money this way, we'll send you some electricity that way.
It's the same thing with oil and gas and the produced water issue. I mean, years ago when I worked here for the Yates family, I mean, we looked at a lot of different technologies. The technology's there to clean up the water. That's not an issue. I mean, it can be done, and water can be made into drinking water. The issue is what do you do with the waste that you generate from the cleaning up of that water? And so it's the same thing with nuclear. It's the same thing with any industry. There's always a waste stream. What do you do with the waste stream? And that's a challenging thing.
It is.
And sometimes that's the most expensive part of the whole process, is the disposal of the waste.
Right. And then if anybody says, well, there's no byproduct with the sun, there's no byproduct with the wind, then that's where the education process comes in, and you have to say, well, that's not entirely true. Let's take a look at these things that have to happen.
I have two more things I want to touch on right quickly. As we all, and I think maybe I touched on this a little bit the last time I was here, but the lesser prairie chicken has come back into the news. It's being proposed again for a listing decision in the next 12 months. The Fish and Wildlife Service will make a decision on whether or not to list the prairie chicken. There's a lot of movement out there collecting information, pro and con, for that listing decision. They've actually done something a little different this year in this listing, as they've designated critical habitat, the northern portion, which takes in the Panhandle, Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma. That's looking at one designation to possibly be threatened. The southern part, which includes West Texas and southeast New Mexico, they're looking at as trying to propose that as an endangered. There's no science behind that right now that we can find to support those decisions, so it's a battle that we're up against again. That decision, I think the comment period will be over with on like the 2nd of August, so a lot of things going on out there to try to submit comments on that. The commission's entertaining that idea to do that. Also, the Texas hornshell mussel, it's back in the news. They're looking at trying to designate critical habitat for the hornshell mussel, both in New Mexico and in Texas and the lower regions of Texas. Two bodies of water that occur in southeast New Mexico are the Delaware River and the Black River. Both of those have been blocked out as trying to consider for critical habitat. It's really interesting to me sometimes that we have the Delaware River, which is dry, that's considered critical habitat for the mussel, but at the same time, on a positive side of that, there's been some programs that we saw implemented several years ago on the chicken and the mussel that were called candidate conservation agreements with assurances. These are federal programs that operators, landowners, and others can participate in, which gives them some protection in being able to operate on those lands. Some people like them, some people don't. But quite frankly, they have some merit to them. If we did not have those, we probably would be shut down by now. And those things are still out there if folks are interested in enrolling those. The Center for Hazardous Materials, Center for Excellence Hazardous Materials in Carlsbad actually oversee the permits for those for the Fish and Wildlife Service. They have a lot of information out there, and they are a good clearinghouse to let us know what's going on. But both of those issues, I'm going to stress, especially the lesser prairie chicken, because it affects a lot of the oil and gas industry. It can be as big or bigger than it was last time we went through this battle 10 or 15 years ago. It's something that needs to be on everybody's radar screen. They better pay attention. There's a lot of wind. This kind of, I just thought about what I was going to say. There's a lot of wind coming out of Washington blowing against that sail.
Well,
anyway, that just popped in my mind, but I think that's a good analogy because there is a lot of support for the Endangered Species Act right now, and a lot of those species that were proposed for listing that were able to be mitigated through some of these programs have come back and are being looked at really hard by some of the environmental groups.
That's interesting, and a lot of this will change with administrations in Washington, and so we come off of a period of a Republican administration, which is less likely to push these types of issues, and now we've got a different administration and a different Interior Secretary that is really going to be more open to these types of conversations.
The science has not changed.
Correct.
The messengers have changed, and unfortunately, as we saw with the last listing proposal on the dune sagebrush lizard and the chicken, you find out that it's an easy question I like to ask in the room when I have my environmental friends there. How much money have you put into conservation efforts or mitigation for this species? And the answer is always the same, 0. But how much money has been put into your lawyers' pockets through these programs is pretty big.
It's huge. And you probably remember the spotted owl debate.
I remember that.
You know, and the spotted owls can only live in these types of trees. Well, what about these living in the Kmart sign over here? You know, what about these living over there? Or what's the blonde joke? You saw the deer crossing sign. How did the deer know to cross here? The science doesn't change. You're exactly right, Jerry. The science doesn't change, but the attitudes, the emotions of the people that are involved in influencing this policy decision changes.
Industry has put millions and millions of dollars into conservation of habitat for the lesser prairie chicken and dune sagebrush lizard. Without that, I can tell you the chicken would be in a lot worse shape. Numbers are up for the prairie chickens. Habitat is up for the lesser prairie chicken because of these efforts. But yet the proposal's still coming up as to list. I can tell you a good friend of mine with Xcel Energy told me the other day that they have their wind farm that went up by Dora somewhere. They put like $4 million into preservation of habitat for lesser prairie chicken for that project. That's a lot of money in anybody's house. And so those kinds of efforts that are on the ground take time to prove themselves. And I'll just say this, industry's done about everything we can do but make it rain. And the good Lord did that for us in the last couple of weeks. I think the numbers will be up. They're asking for extension of time for this listing proposal because those surveys are done in the spring. Numbers aren't compiled till in the summer, which will be in July, August of 2022. Their proposal to list was like in end of May, 1st of June is when that proposal decision. So they're asking for an extension of time just to be able to get those new numbers in and gather the data. The proposal's like over 200 pages. So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so it takes time to do that. We can't do it in 60 or 90 days and give it justification for consideration. So.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that, folks. That's going to be back. Fred, is there anything else you'd like to
Well, you
talk
hit
about?
the nail on the head. This goes back to one administration versus another. I've been around long enough and in the business long enough, I can remember the cattle-free in '93 movement when Clinton got into office. That kind of faded out with Bush. It's some of this stuff and the environmental stuff got resurrected during the Obama administration. It kind of got put to rest under Trump. And now we hear it comes back. It's not cattle-free in '93, it's a 30-30 plan. Same mindset. It's not the same people, it's their kids or grandkids. This is all about gaining control via public land of private property. Kim has done a good job of being somebody between us and the federal government to prevent some of that with the candidate conservation agreements. I did sign up for one of those. A lot of people didn't. But if they list this as critical habitat, Delaware's, some of it's listed as base water for BLM ranches. A lot of Black River is listed as base water for BLM ranches. If they don't have that and they come in and designate this critical habitat, then they can build a fence around the water, and guess what?
You don't have any water.
You don't have any water, or you have to go drill a well, and there's alternatives. You could work around it, but it is all about taking over property.
Yeah.
Under the guise of whatever you want to call it. 20 years it'll be something else. So
they meaning the other side or the environmental side or whatever, never ever give up. It seems like they just keep pushing forward.
They just wait 8 years and here they come again. So
and all that. So regardless of what your position may or may not be on the issue right now, you do need to be aware of these upcoming hearings and meetings and be aware of these programs coming up. And as you said, Jerry, get educated. Learn what, don't see what somebody posted on social media, or don't, even the media is getting to the point people don't trust the media anymore, So
I wonder why.
Learn about those issues and get ready for those.
There's a lot of information out there. And I'll just throw this out in my position with the county. I mean, I may not know all of that, but I can probably help point people in the right direction that want to know.
Excellent.
So if I'm there available for those kind of things.
Very good. Jerry, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
I appreciate you.
Fred, always good to see you. And nice to see you at the 9/11 memorial. A couple weeks ago, met you and your wife, and you get a chance to go through that exhibit. Did you guys go through that, the 9/11 memorial?
I was out of town.
You were out of town?
They planned it wrong. They didn't ask me if I was going to be out of town. I missed it. I hated that.
Yeah, but you had a chance to go through it.
I didn't that day, but I came back on the Monday and did. But if you walk through that and you don't get tears in your eyes, there's something wrong.
Yeah, it was great that it was here, and I had the gentleman that drives the tractor trailer. That he's from Texas, actually. He's from like Plano, Texas, and he said they'd been to some stops prior to where they really didn't get a good public reception.
Wow. It wasn't here.
The attitude was like, why are you doing this? Who cares? That was 20 years ago, whatever. But they did not get that reaction here, and they were very thankful and appreciative of the turnout and the reception they received here in Artesia. So I'm glad they came here. So good deal. You'll catch them on the next one. Maybe they'll be back.
I hope so.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'm going to go have chicken for lunch.
Great.
No. See, that's
Where'd
one of
you
those.
get
Well, out there, No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm going to get myself in trouble. All right.
Obviously, you've never eaten a prairie chicken, or you wouldn't be saying that.
No,
I have back when it was all legal. And, yeah, you're right. They're not.
good.
Yeah.
nothing to write home about, I guess. All right. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break.